That silly fish, the crawfie, has been swimming in my coffee. And now I've drunk it up and he's not in the cup. Do you think he drowned? Hi, Joe Golson here with WP Law Incorporated. You might be wondering, what's up with the poem? Well, this silly little poem illustrates the obvious things that we overlook when we diagnose irrigation or any kind of system, whether complicated or simple. For instance, I know you guys have in the past tried to repair an electrical appliance that didn't work, only to find out that it was unplugged. Oh, you haven't? Well, I have. Last week, we talked about how to diagnose a valve that kept on running even though the controller was unplugged. So today, we're going to go through a checklist of obvious things you should look for when you troubleshoot an irrigation system. So we're going to start at the controller, we'll move out to the field, to the water source, and from the water source to the valves, and from the valves to the laterals, and finally end at the sprinkler heads. So we're standing in front of the controller, and some of the first things we do is to check to make sure the controller is plugged in, that the circuit breaker has not been tripped. And we're going to make sure that the transformer is not faulty. And from there, we're going to check to make sure that the controller is set to automatic because it won't run and off. And then we'll check the run times, the start times, the watering days, and most important of all, we will check to make sure that there is a rain sensor attached, because the controller will not run if there had been a rain event in the past day or so. Now from there, we go to the water source. Now we'll start with a water meter. It could be a pump station. So go to the water meter and we'll check to see if the backflow preventer is turned on and the isolation valve is turned on. If these two items have been turned off during the winter, we sometimes forget, and that would be the reason why the system doesn't run. Now if it's a pumping system, we'll check things, well, pumping system on a non-pressurized system, I should say. We'll check things like the pump start relay to make sure that's in working order. We'll check to make sure the pump circuit breaker hasn't tripped. We'll check to make sure there's no breaks in the main line, the motor isn't faulty, or that the suction line hasn't been compromised. Now from here, we'll make our way to the wiring between the controller and the valves. So, if we have a multi-zone system, and the first few zones work great, but the zones after that don't work at all, we can suspect there's a faulty common. Now, if most of the zones work great electrically, except for a few of them, then we can assume that there's a fault in the field wiring. Now from there, we're going to move to the valves. Now, if a valve doesn't open at all, we can assume that it is the solenoid. The solenoid could be shorted out. Or, if the valve is so equipped, we could have a valve with a flow control. Now, the flow control comes in handy because it allows the user to control the amount of water downstream, but also if the valve fails, you can turn the flow control off. If you forget that it's off, of course the zone won't work. So now we're going to go down from the zone to the lateral. So let's say the lateral lines after the zone, that whole zone is running poorly. There could be several reasons. One reason could be that we have a valve that is only partially on, or we could have a valve, or the lateral lines, that is, you could have a break in the lateral lines. Now, in an upcoming segment, I'll show you how to diagnose and repair a valve that only runs partially on. Now we'll make our way down to the heads themselves. Now, on a marginal system, a system with marginal pressure, if we have a problem with the wiper seals in the heads, the wiper seal inflates and prevents the dirt and keeps the water in the head when it's running. But if the wiper seal itself fails and you get flow by, that is, water seeping up between the head and the seal, that also acts like a leak. So in a marginal system, one or more heads leaking like this is the same as a big break. So we'll check for that. Now we get down to the head itself. Go back to this. So if the connection between the head and the ladder line is broken, of course, and you got several heads broken on a system, then that will prevent the zone from running. Now, in the upcoming segments, I'll teach you how to, like I said, diagnose and repair a valve that is only partially open. I'll teach you how to use an ohm meter to diagnose faulty common or field wiring, and how to troubleshoot with an ohm meter a shorted solenoid. I'll also go over simple ways we have for fixing broken lateral lines or main lines. So until then, this is Joe Golson with WP Law. See you then. That poor fish.